call to order the December 11th, 2013 meeting of the Planning Commission of the Town of Los Gatos. We would ask that everyone stand and join Commissioner John Bourgeois in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have a roll call, Mr. Wilson, so we can be sure that we have everyone in attendance.
Commissioner Sayoc?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Here. Commissioner Talasfor?
Here.
Commissioner Bourgeois?
Here.
Commissioner Birch?
Here.
Vice Chair Smith?
Here.
Chair Erickson?
Here. The Town of Los Gatos, and in particular the Planning Commission, strongly encourages the participation of the public in the deliberations of the Planning Commission, and strongly encourages your participation both this evening and as we move through all the deliberations of the council. Yeah, I'm going to swap. I'll give it a whirl second time. So we strongly strongly encourage the participation of all members of the public. There are three ways that members of the public can participate in the deliberations of the Planning Commission. First is if you provide written comments on items that are on the agenda so they can be incorporated in the packet that's distributed to the Commission. At the meetings of the Commission, including this evening, there are two opportunities for members of the public to address the Commission. First is on any agendized item during the public portion of the public hearing. The second is when we get to the called verbal communications part of the agenda, where members of the public can address us on any item that is not on the agenda. Address the Commission in either of those cases, we'd ask that you fill out a speaker's card, which is on the back of the benches out in the audience, and give it to the staff, either to our right or to our left, so they can provide it to us so we can call you at the appropriate moment as we move through the agenda. There were minutes from the November 13th Commission meeting that were distributed in the packets to the Commission. And do we have additions, corrections to the minutes, or a motion for adoption? Commissioner Sayoc.
I'll move to adopt the minutes.
Motion by Commissioner Sayoc to adopt the minutes. Commissioner Talasfor.
And I'll second that.
Second that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. The minutes are adopted as distributed. We have written communications, desk items for items number 3 and number 5 on the agenda tonight. Before we get to item number 3, we'll be sure that everyone has had a chance to review those desk items if you haven't already. There are no requested continuances on the agenda for this evening's meeting. The members of the Planning Commission, in addition to serving on the Planning Commission, serve on several committees of the town, and one of those is the Historic Preservation Committee, and Kendra Birch is our commissioner, one of the two commissioners who serves on the Historic Preservation Committee, is going to report on the last 2 meetings of the Historic Preservation Committee.
Thank you, Chair Erickson. Yes, the Historic Preservation Committee met on December 4th. Okay, his isn't working, and I don't think you can hear me. There were 2 items on the agenda for December 4th. Item 1 was 51 Ellenwood Avenue, where they were requesting to add onto a historic home, add a second story. The commission discussed it thoroughly with the homeowner and requested that they come back with some revisions to that. This second item was 207 Los Gatos Boulevard. The homeowner and the architect were requesting to add a patio, covered patio, to the existing home. The committee made comments and suggestions, then approved the item. Today, there was a special meeting to allow 51 Ellenwood to come back. The architect and the homeowner came back with some multiple revisions and options for the home. The committee reviewed all of them, went thoroughly through the various changes with the architect, finally recommending approval for one of the options that the architect had submitted. We also had an item that came in, 212 Bean Avenue. It's a revision to a front porch, which the Historic Preservation Committee has seen more than once. Oh. Okay, I'll try that again. It really wasn't that bad of an item. It was simply a porch, and with the revisions that we suggested, we approved it and moved it on, and I'll stop talking then.
Any questions for Commissioner Birch? Not. Thank you very much. We would now move to the item on the agenda, which is verbal communications, which is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the commission on an item, on any issue that is not agendized as an item. We have one speaker card for that, John Shepherdson.
We had another meeting tonight? CDAC.
Oh, about that. Hold on, John, a second. Yeah, we had a CDAC meeting this afternoon that I was actually at. I'll let Commissioner Talasfor report on the CDAC meeting for us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so wait a minute, let me get my notes on that. 1 second. Okay, so we had now you can hear me, right? All right. We had a meeting today at 105 Newell Avenue and about 105 Newell Avenue, which is the Elks Lodge, which is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Winchester and Newell, and it's near the intersection of Lark Avenue. The developer came forward requesting review of the plans for demolition of this existing commercial building and a planned development rezoning to allow construction of either a 5-lot single-family subdivision or 11 residential condominium units. And the committee commented on, well, they had two possible development alternatives for the committee to comment on. And the one was, so the committee did give input on the number of units, the building design, and the lot layouts, and the setbacks, and probably we're looking, although I can't say that the committee favored one development over another, they did say to pay attention to the number of units in both plans so as not to create more traffic in that already impacted area. And that, I think, was it. Did we have anything else that you wanted to add, Charles?
Are there questions for other members, from other members of the commission about the CDAC meeting this afternoon? If not, now we will move to the verbal communications portion of the agenda and invite any member of the public to address the commission on any item which is not on the agenda. John Shepherdson first.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Is big money developers taking over the town? Just before Thanksgiving, we received a mailer, residents in the town, from a group calling itself We Support Los Gatos. The fine print said major funding was by the Los Gatos Business Park LLC. Who is the LG Business Park LLC? They are the developers of Albright. That is the Carlyle Group and Peter Powell and Sandhill Properties. The Carlyle Group is a $170 billion company. Their website states, the Carlyle Group website states their mission is to generate superior investment returns, and their service is to act in the best interests of the investors. They sought to break the law and our general plan. The law required an environmental impact report, and they did not get one. They sought 85-foot tall buildings and 550,000 square feet and 160 residential units. Citizens fought back and won. The court ordered an EIR, which stated the environmentally superior alternative was 350,000 square feet. The developers submitted a misleading feasibility report. It did not include in it the $63 million Netflix lease, and it indicated that they needed to make at least 7% return, but at the 485,000 square foot approval, that equates to 6.85% ROI. So they're still going ahead with the development. Then the developer, they are now going to ballot. They've hired signature gatherers who scared people into thinking Netflix is leaving. Save Netflix. Netflix had to go so far as to issue a press statement that it was not leaving Los Gatos. Just yesterday, members of the town council distanced themselves from the mailer. The mailer says that the initiative was submitted by Los Gatos residents, is led by Los Gatos residents Leslie Logan, who's here tonight, and Philip Albanese. Mr. Albanese's company is doing demolition work at Albright. So there's the money connection. Ms. Logan, are you being paid by the developers? I think this is a fair question since you've taken such a public position on this and you've rallied the parents in the community to this. That I think it's fair for the community to know if you are being compensated by the developer. And I would ask that you answer that question tonight. I'll go so far as to say I have not been paid a dime by the Citizens Group. I've donated hundreds of hours of my time and my own money. The mailer states that a small group of opponents filed these suits to stall and kill the project. That could not be further from the truth. We are for this development, 350,000. Netflix only needs 242,750 square feet. The 350,000 under the EIR will take care of Netflix. So we don't need to go beyond that. What the additional 135,000 square feet is to simply enhance the profits of the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Are there other members of the public who would like to address the commission on items which are not on the agenda? Seeing no one, will move forward with the agenda. It's my privilege this evening to recognize Commissioner John Bourgeois, who will complete his term of service on the Planning Commission with this evening's meeting. Commissioner Bourgeois has served on the commission for almost a decade, having been appointed to 2 4-year terms and having filled out a vacancy on the commission. During that decade of service to the citizens of the town of Los Gatos on the Planning Commission, he's chaired the commission. He's also served on the General Plan Committee during the development of the 2020 General Plan and on the North 40 Specific Plan Advisory Committee as those guidelines were also being developed. He chaired the General Plan Committee very ably during the development of the General Plan housing element and the affordable housing overlay zone regulations, and he carefully guided the process to an outcome that balanced the legal obligations of the town with the implications and concerns for residents of the town. John has regularly demonstrated an exceptional understanding of the regulations and guidelines that govern land use planning in the town of Los Gatos, and has regularly provided keen insight into the interpretation and application of those regulations and guidelines in a wide variety of situations. His sharp, inquisitive manner has always been characterized by a respect for all parties and an openness and a sensitivity which has encouraged the participation of the public, the citizens of the town of Los Gatos. It's been a privilege to have served on the Planning Commission with John, for myself, and for the other members of the Planning Commission that are here tonight, and those that have served with you in the earlier years when you were on. So we would like to thank you as Planning Commissioners for serving with us, but more importantly, to thank you on behalf of the citizens of the town of Los Gatos for your almost decade of service on the Planning Commission. Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you, Charles. I'll call you Charles. That was very nice. I know we have a very long agenda, but after 8.5 years, I hope you'll indulge me just with a couple thank yous very quickly. First of all, I'd like to thank the Town Council members who on 3 separate occasions appointed me to this body. I'd like to thank the staff, and I'd particularly like to call out Joel, Suzanne, Sandy, Arlene, Irwin, and Ori, who's no longer on staff, who were all of particular guidance at difficult times for me on the commission, and especially early in my tenure. I would like to mention the General Plan Committee. I had the privilege of chairing that for the last 2 or 3 years under some very difficult times, and we did a lot of very hard work over the past couple years. With the 2020 General Plan update, Affordable Housing Overlay Zone, and the North 40 Specific Plan, so some very challenging. So that is a great group of people, and I would like to thank them personally. But most importantly, I'd like to really thank my fellow colleagues on the Planning Commission. This is, for those of you that don't know, everyone who's up here is a volunteer. So we do this out of our love for this community. And I feel good leaving this body because of the people that are up here. And so I know it's in good hands. So thank you all very much. I'd like to special tip of my cap to Joanne and Tom, who have the only 2 that are serving longer than me. They were on the commission years before I came on, and a tip of the hat to your longevity, because this is very hard work and it's very thankless work, and I'd like to thank all of you very much. So, thanks.
Now back to the business of the Planning Commission. There are 2 items on the consent calendar this evening. Agenda item number 1, which is the proposed 2014 meeting schedule for the Planning Commission, and agenda item number 2, conditional use permit application U13019, which is requesting approval to install one 24-inch microwave dish on an existing wireless telecommunication facility on Winchester Boulevard. Is there a commissioner who wishes to remove one of the items from the consent calendar? Or there is a member of the public who would like to remove either of the items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, the chair would invite a motion to adopt the consent calendar. Commissioner Smith.
Yes, I'll move to accept the consent calendar regarding both the Planning Commission 2014 meeting schedule and conditional use permit application U13019.
Commissioner Birch.
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'd just like to state for the record, for obvious reasons, I'll be abstaining from item number 1, the schedule for next year.
So ask the staff a question. Do we need to split the motion on the consent calendar?
You don't.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing, is a continued public hearing from an item that was continued from the October 9th, 2013 meeting of the Commission. That's considering architectural site application S-13-049, which is requesting approval to demolish a pre-1941 single-family residence and to construct a new single-family residence at 134 Loma Alta Avenue on property which is zoned R18. May I have a show of hands from the commissioners who have visited the property under consideration? Are there any disclosures by a commissioner for this item? Seeing none, Ms. Savage, may we have a brief staff report?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. The item was reviewed on the October 9th meeting, as you mentioned, and the Planning Commission gave specific direction to the applicant, especially to address the neighbors' concerns in the redesign. The applicant changed the plans and redesigned the project, including increasing the setbacks of the second story from the first story and also reducing the height of the structure by 2 feet and 1 inch. The applicant also addressed the Planning Commission's direction to ensure that the redesign complies with the residential design guidelines and also fits in with the neighborhood. In the redesign, the applicant changed the architectural style from the previously proposed Spanish style to a Craftsman style, and this was done to accommodate the setbacks that he did increase on the second story from the first. The increased second story setbacks are more compatible with the Craftsman style design. The applicant also provided a shadow study showing a one-story, a two-story that was previously proposed, and then also the new redesigned two-story. The shadow study also includes the shadow impacts of the existing fence on the neighbor to the right. The applicant finally did also meet with the neighbors as well. And this concludes staff presentation, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Are there questions for the staff at this time? Seeing none, we will now open the public portion of the public hearing, give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes. I believe Donald Prolo is going to address the commission. We'd ask that you tell us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Donald Prolo, and I'm the owner of 134 Loma Alta. The last time I was here, the Commission and some neighbors had concerns about the design of my house. Since that meeting, Chris Spalding, my architect, and I have greatly redesigned the house to address those concerns. Here is the original proposed house. It was a 2,334 square foot Spanish colonial revival style house which did not have any setbacks on the second floor. Here is the redesigned house. The house is now Craftsman style, has been reduced in size and height, and set back on the second floor in the front along the sides. As Larry Cannon, the town's consulting architect, writes in his letter, the proposed house is modest in scale and well designed. The Craftsman style with a large front porch and second floor setback will reinforce the first floor feel of the front facade and relate well in scale to the adjacent one-story homes. The house as proposed should fit comfortably into the neighborhood and relate to both the one-story and the larger two-story homes in the neighborhood. Here is an aerial view of my property. You can see that the Evandens house with the red roof at the top, note that it is 4 feet from my property line and it covers most of their lot and has a larger FAR value than my proposed house. The Logan's house is to the right of my property and it too covers a significant portion of their lot, including the outbuilding along my property line and the garage in the back. This is the Evans house from my yard. Here's the Logan's house and Lowe's house up above the Logan's house from my backyard. This house up here is the Lowe's house, and the Logan's is down below. This is a view of Steve Piasecki's house from my yard, which is located across the alley. The structure you see is actually his garage. At the last meeting, the Planning Commission requested that I meet with the neighbors, revise the plans, provide a shadow study, reference the residential guidelines, and show how the architectural style fits with the neighborhood. I'm going to go through each of these requests. I carefully read the residential design guidelines and used Appendix A, How to Read Your Neighborhood, as I walk the neighborhood. The guidelines on page 11 have two examples of the town's interpretation of the immediate neighborhood, one showing 10 and the other 12 houses for a standard subdivision. Since Loma Alta is not a standard subdivision and the lot sizes vary, I looked at 15 houses in my immediate neighborhood to get a better idea of the architectural styles and sizes of houses on Loma Alta. There are 4 houses that are larger in square feet and 6 houses that are larger in terms of the FAR than my house. The architectural styles are mostly a mixture of Craftsman, Victorian, Ranch, and there are a few other French and Spanish style houses. I've revised the plans by reducing the height and square footage on the second floor and set the second floor back in the front and along the sides. I changed the home to Craftsman style. The new design has a reduced visual mass and scale of home, and the FAR is less than the house immediately next door. I also lessened the shadow on the neighboring home at 132 Loma Alta. The second floor setbacks are in red and are much greater than the zoning requires. The second floor has been notched to be even further away here in this area to lessen impacts. The balcony has been reduced to 3 feet to allow a door to open for air circulation, but is too small for an outdoor living space. This shadow study compares the original proposed house, the current design, and a one-story house. The new design casts a shadow that is very similar to the one-story house and is greatly improved from the original design. This is the worst-case shadow when the day is the shortest and the shadow is the longest of the year at 9 a.m. Even the one-story house covers the entire side of the Evans house. As the sun moves, the shadow will be diminished later in the day. These photos were taken from my property and directly across the street from my property. They are houses I included in my expanded neighborhood. I was surprised to find that the 2 houses I can see from my front yard are actually in the residential guidelines. Neighborhood support. I met with many neighbors and I found a lot of support for my project. Please see the list of signatures and emails supporting my project.
Mr. Perlow, we would ask that you wrap up as quickly as
Sure.
possible.
This is the last slide. In summary, my house meets all of the town's zoning regulations and guidelines. I'm not asking for any variances. The house has been redesigned to address comments made by immediate neighbors regarding the previous design and its compatibility with the neighborhood in mass, bulk, FAR, and square footage. Thank you for your time, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Perlow. Are there questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Sayoc.
Thank you, Mr. Perlow. After reviewing what you've submitted, it's quite obvious to me that you have taken significant review of the comments that we had made from the previous meeting and tried to incorporate that into it. I do have several questions, though, of you. Did you have a chance to review the desk items that we have in front of us? They were responses to what you are submitting?
No.
Has he
No.
seen any of those?
I got those. What are you speaking of, the Logans and Evans
Correct.
letters?
That was.
I got those this morning.
Do you have any comments to those? Specifically, what I would like to know is your existing garage that's behind the home that you're planning to demolish.
Correct.
If I read it correctly, that is not, it's closer to your neighbor, yet the shadows that it's going to push out to your neighbor is not similar to the shadows that you have in your shadow study.
Correct.
So
Oh, I'm sorry.
no. What is the height of your existing garage that you're planning to demolish? Do you happen to know that?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but you were about to say something before.
Oh,
I asked.
that structure is lower than the one-story house would be. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah. Do you know by how much?
I don't know exactly. No,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. And then the second general question was, do you have any responses to what they've submitted, if you've had a chance to read it?
Yes, but well, in what particularly?
For example, the shadow study. They disagree that a one-story is going to be better to your neighbor than the two-story. Like
Right.
your argument with your current design is that it would actually be beneficial to your neighbor.
Well, in some respects, it would. The house would not go as far back, or as deep into the lot, and so the one-story house does cast a shadow onto their house, and it won't go as far deep into the lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Huh?
Right.
Okay.
And so, as far as the one story and the two story I have proposed, they're not identical, but I try to set back the right side and carve it out and shorten that distance as much as possible, and I minimized the sizes of the rooms in the second floor to get them as much light as I could, as much light as I could.
Okay. Okay, that answers it. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you for your presentation. Is my mic on? Yes, okay. Since you gave me yours, I wanted to be sure. The one question I have is about the balcony and the fact that it, if I understood you correctly, what you're saying is that 3 feet is the minimum that's needed to open up a door and get some circulation. Is that door then going outward or coming inward? Because we have seen, and I'll just preface this, we have seen balconies that are not 3 feet deep, but the doors open inward into a bedroom.
I would have to ask Chris.
Okay, well, that was just one of the questions I had, because there was some concern about that balcony, even though it was now reduced in size to 3 feet. And so would you be open to not having that balcony?
I'd have to think about that for a second.
All right, well, that's one of the questions I have,
Okay.
is whether or not that balcony can go away. All right?
Sure.
So, thank you.
Do it. Yes.
Commissioner Telesfor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. And it is a well-designed house. However, I'm quite stymied by that, because it's a new house. It's something totally that didn't even relate to what was there previously. And I know you went before Historic Preservation. We have some minutes here from them. And as I read through them, the committee, it seems, felt that they would like to have the style remain the same. So I'm curious as to why you could not accomplish what you're trying to accomplish now using the same style as the house, because our historic guidelines, ask us to maintain the integrity of the forms and the characteristic style of those homes. So can you answer that for me?
Well, that's exactly why I had a Spanish-style house designed originally. And the Spanish-style houses, or the architecture, has a lot of walls that go from the first floor to the second floor that are continuous. And when we went to redesign this house to bring, because there were concerns that it appeared too bulky from the street and that it was too close, the second floors were too close to my neighbors. When we adjusted the floor plan and it changed the geometry of the house, it didn't really look like a Spanish style. It didn't have the geometry of a Spanish style house anymore. It looked more like a craftsman style house. And additionally, when I walked the neighborhood, there weren't a lot of Spanish style houses around, and I was trying to make something that would blend and wouldn't stick out as much as the first house did.
So did you consider a design of a one-story to accomplish everything you would like?
Oh, yes, I did consider the design of a one-story, but here, let's see, let me go to this. I'm trying to find oh, here it is. So if you look at the one-story house, that's essentially what the Evendens have. And there's not much of a backyard, especially if I have a two-car garage back here. So this distance right here is only 17, 18 feet. And one of the main reasons why I purchased the property is because it allowed to have the zoning allowed to have the garage in the back and then the house in the front, and then I could have a nice backyard in the center there. So if I went to the one-story, it would kind of, the whole reason why I bought the property doesn't, I wouldn't be able to have a backyard.
Okay, or did you consider any other type of alteration? A story
Yes.
and a half? I mean, I
I
don't
considered
want to design it for
I
you.
considered moving either one of the other bedrooms downstairs or the master downstairs. And the issue I had with that is that I bought the house. I want it to be a family home. And if I have children someday, I don't want the master to be, on the bottom and then all the other bedrooms on the top. And also the way the house is designed, there's kind of the living area on the first floor. It's a nice open, when you walk in, there's the dining area, and then it feeds into the kitchen, and it's all open there, and then it feeds out to the patio. And then the second floor has kind of the living space, which is set apart from all that. And so if I had the master downstairs, then it would be a situation where since the lot isn't wide, it would have to basically go right next to the kitchen, and then it's not really, if someone's up later in the kitchen when someone's trying to sleep right in the master bedroom, it's just not a great situation.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Other members of the commission have questions at this time of the applicant? Thank you very much. We know that you provided a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and some of the letters that we'll distribute to the commission at this time. And if we have questions about that, we'll do that when we call you back after the next portion of the hearing.
Sure, thank you.
We now invite comments from members of the public. If you wish to address the commission on this agenda item, we'd ask, and you haven't already submitted a speaker's card, we'd ask you to do that at this time. When you're called upon to speak, we would remind you to please state your name and address for the record. And you would have up to 3 minutes to speak. When the little yellow light goes on, you're 30 seconds to the end of the 3-minute period of time. And when you finish your comments, pause for a second, because there may be questions from members of the commission about your comments to the commission. The first person we would call is John Shepherdson.
John Shepherdson, 120 Oak Rim. I always get nervous before I speak before the council or commission, so bear with me. With respect to Mr. Prolo's request to build a two-story home on Loma Alta, I have mixed feelings. It was disappointing to me personally that his neighbor opposed his prior request, in part based upon claims of loss of privacy and views. She publicly advocated for development elsewhere in town that invaded the privacy and blended the views for over 100 Charter Oaks homeowners. But let's judge not that we be not judged. If I were to let anger drive my views, it would suggest 2, 3, or 4 stories would be appropriate for Mr. Prolo's home. And yet, would not this advocacy for breaking the development rules, would not I be wrong myself for advocating something that I thought was very wrong on the Albright development? So I find myself, after reflecting and shaking, here to support Mr. Prolo, who seems to be a reasonable fellow and whom I have a personal liking for. I am also here to support Ms. Logan and all the immediate neighbors. I do not know the details of residential guidelines. I simply ask that you listen to everyone's concerns and perspectives and fairly apply the town development standards to the project as proposed. Long after this hearing is over, these words that I'm saying now will evaporate like mist. These neighbors may be living next to each other for a long time. It seems to me that an even-handed evaluation can best foster peace and goodwill good things to experience this time of year and throughout the year.
Are there questions for the speaker? If not, thank you, Mr. Shepherdson. Karen Evenden.
Hi, my name's Karen Evenden. I live at 132 Loma Alta Avenue, which is the house which is downslope from.
Ms. Evenden, can we get you to tilt the mic to you?
Sorry.
That'd be great.
Sorry, I'm nervous and I don't want to speak.
That's okay.
So we met with Mr. Prolo afterwards, and then we got the revised plans last week, and I apologize for just getting our submission through yesterday. I did them as fast as I could after I'd seen the plans. So I appreciate that it's an improvement from what we had seen before, because we were really quite horrified by the original proposals that we had seen. But we still feel that it has a very significant negative effect on our property. Firstly, there's the solar access. The shadows are improved from the shadow study, but the first shadow study that was shown in June, it's a best case scenario. It's at the summer solstice. And at that point, it sort of hits the bottom third of our wall, so it kind of grazes like the bottom third of my kids' windows probably. And every time after that, every day after that, it gets worse. It rises higher and higher and higher. And you can see from the shadow study in December that it gets higher and higher and higher, and the difference between a one-story and a two-story actually increases. And so the impact of the one-story is less as the year goes on versus what a two-story is. And I also included in my submission, it was a photo I took yesterday. I was in my daughter's bedroom. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning, and the sun was streaming through. It came over the fence, and there was a lot of sunlight in my daughter's room. And I took another photo, and it's really hard to see because of the glare, but basically the sun was coming over what a one-story building would be, but would have been blocked by a two-story. And because the second story goes all the way through to the back of the house, it means that effect is going to be for the whole length of the property of the second story. Because I know Mr. Prolo has reduced the setbacks and everything, but actually the second floor story has only been reduced by 3%. That's the mass of the second story is reduced by 3%. And actually, if you look at the main building, the mass of the main building, so I took out the auxiliary bathroom by the garage, but then there's a covered porch, and it's a very substantial covered porch, which is underneath the master bedroom. So in a sense, it does form part of the mass of the construction, even though it's not counted in the square footage. And that covered porch has actually increased in size versus the previous plan. And if you look at the mass of his previous, of his new proposal, there's a difference of 1% in the square footage of the main building. And this then causes so many other issues. I think a lot of we suggested to Mr. Prolo that perhaps he consider moving because he seems so adamant to not want to build down into the basement. And so we suggested that maybe if he didn't have a covered porch and maybe moved some of the second story down to the covered porch, and that would decrease the whole mass of the building. It would help issues of privacy, because it would mean that the second story wouldn't be looking so closely over our backyards, because it would be further set back, because the second story wouldn't be so large. Or and
we'd ask you to wrap up as quickly as possible. Yeah.
So just to summarize, we feel that there's not really been a huge movement. And yes, the setbacks have improved a bit, but we still have the impact of the shadow quite significantly on our building. We still have the issues of privacy with the balcony looking over our back garden, and there's still a huge mass next to us that's towering over us, rather than being in keeping with the rest of the block, which is a single story. And we all have single stories, and we have all of the issues with single stories, but we're respectful of each other because of them.
Let's see if there are questions from members of the commission. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. Could you remind me again how long you have owned the home?
Or 4.5 years.
4.5 years. And setting aside the shadow issue, which design, the Spanish style or the Craftsman, is the design that you would prefer next door to you? And setting aside the, the second story.
Do you know, I probably don't have a firm opinion on that. I like Spanish style buildings. I live in a Spanish style house, and I really like the design of it. I mean, I lived in Spain. I love everything about Spain. I don't know. I'm not an architect. I don't know if there is a way he can accommodate a two-story and setbacks. But, I mean, I think it's a shame. I mean, I think Los Gatos is a unique place to live, and when you're tearing down a building, I think you should keep the integrity of a neighborhood if you can.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Evenden? Not at this time. Thank you very much. Ronald Kell.
Hi, I'm Ronald Kale. I live at 122 Loma Alta, which is right across the crossway on the corner over there. And, I've looked at them. I've got pictures for both of them, for the previous design and the new one. The roof does have a little bit of, it's going to have an impact on our view of the hills over there. And my biggest concern is not so much, I like the Craftsman style. It's a very pretty looking design. There's no question. But the problem I'm concerned with is once we open up that block for 2 stories, all the rest are open.